Thank you so much for joining me. Today I will be showing a technique that I learned many years ago. I thought it was worth revisiting the idea of using coffee to stain or to tint paper. I will be creating a Father's Day card along the way. Actually, two of them. We use so many costly products to color our backgrounds that why not use something that doesn't cost a lot and you may already have in your home, like coffee. Let's begin with this tutorial. So for this technique, you can take any brand of coffee that you may have. It could be regular, it could be decaf. Just make sure that it's instant coffee so that it can dissolve. If you want to brew coffee, you can also do that. Just make sure that it's very concentrated. I take a little glass cup and I add 3 spoonsful of coffee. And I just add a little bit of water because I want the consistency to be thick. You can add as much or as little as you'd like. The darker you want the stain to be, the more coffee you would add, or the less amount of water you would add. As I'm putting the cap back on my water, you can see the coffee is already dissolving. As a matter of fact, I didn't even have to mix this. I just moved it around the little cup here. You can see here that the coffee dissolves on its own. This is only when it's instant coffee, of course. The consistency is that like of chocolate fudge, I want to say. So I'm just going to protect my surface here, bringing in just a piece of paper, a white piece of paper. And with a sponge brush, I'm going to apply the color, well, actually the coffee, onto this cream color cardstock. And you'll see that the sponge automatically creates streaks on the piece of paper, on the cardstock. And as you go back and forth, you're giving it a wood look. You give the piece of paper a wood look. And you can use, like I said, any kind of applicator that you would like. Maybe a thicker brush would give you thicker lines that would be more defined and would give it a different wood look. But you could see these lines make it look like wood, and you could go back and forth as many times as you would like. Once I'm done going over my whole piece of paper, I take my heat gun and I just go over the piece of paper. You can let it dry on its own, but I'm a little bit impatient. You could just see here that it also gives it a shine. I'm going to try a different kind of paper here so you could see the difference. The darker paper that you use, of course, by logic, the darker the color will appear. And this is just a regular folder, craft color folder. And again, I'm using the same technique, going back and forth with my stain, with my coffee. Because of the surface of the file folder, it looks a little smoother. So I just go back and forth, give it the different streaks so it could give it that wood look. And then I just go over it with my heat tool again, and I notice that it creates little bubbles. And these bubbles are created because of the sponge. As I press on the sponge, you see these little bubbles are created. And because I heat it quickly, after that, it creates those little bubbles. But you can always smooth them out. Or if they don't bother you, you could just leave them like I did. I'm going to try a different kind of paper here. This is carton, just like a what you would find on a cereal box. And I just go over it with my coffee back and forth, just as I did the other mediums. And I notice that this carton is a little rougher than the file folder and that the cardstock. And it's giving me a more leathery look. As I dry it with my heat tool, it maintains that shine, and it looks more leathery, more than wood. So if you're looking for a look like this, this is the technique you should try. So here I compare all three. This is the more leathery looking one. But this is the one that I'm going to be working on right now. And I just want you to see what happens if we try to make it darker. So here I'm just applying a little bit, another layer of coffee to it. And you can see here how much it darkens. And so if you want something a little more darker, you just add a little more coffee to it. And it still has a great look to it. So I just do the same process. Go ahead and use my heat tool, and I go ahead and I dry it up. And look at how shiny it is. It's like if I had added some type of gloss to it, and it's only coffee. So now I'm going to try the same thing, but I'm going to use white cardstock, not cream. The one before we had done cream, and this is white. And look at how much the streaks are viewed. You could really see them. And I feel it has a more wood look to it. Here's the comparison of both pieces. This is the darker one and then the lighter one. So let's see what happens if we add more water to it. So I just grab the same sponge brush and I just go over my piece with a little bit more water. And again, I use my heat tool to go ahead and dry this. There are a lot of bubbles, but because this is more diluted, they're not as seen as when the coffee is a little thicker. So by adding more water, we get rid of the streaks, and also there is less shine. And I also feel that we're getting also a leathery look to it. So what would happen if I were to actually stamp the image of wood on my paper and then stain it? So that's what I'm doing here. I grabbed a large stamp. This is an acrylic stamp. I believe it's by Stampin' Up. It's called Hardwood. And I stamp it in black VersaFine ink. And I just go ahead and I put it in my MISTI and I stamp it on white cardstock. So here I am going ahead and staining it with that same mixture of the coffee, just with water. And I go ahead with a sponge brush and I brush over top of the stamp. And you lose a little bit the streaks, the natural streaks that the coffee gives the paper, but you have those streaks with the stamp. So it really depends on what look you're going for to complement your piece or whatever project you will be doing. And here, of course, I have the comparison of the one stamped with the wood stamp and the other one without it. So now let's start on creating our card. This is my card base, and as always, it is pre-printed. I printed on my machine the inside and the outside. I chose to use this denim stack. This is by Die Cuts with the View. I believe this is Joann's, and it has a lot of different prints of jeans, and I thought it would go perfect with the wood look that I got. So as always, put my cardstock and then I go around it with my X-Acto knife, and that gives me a perfect coverage of my first layer. I go ahead and I reach for my large happy die, and this is the Mega Happy die, and this is by Altenew, and I die cut it out of black cardstock. I actually cut this out 3 times, and that's just to make the happy a little thicker. Gives it more dimension. So I was missing the streaks that the brush look gives the paper. So I went ahead and I just, with my finger, I added a little bit of color just to give it different tone here and there in color, not so much with the stamp. So I like how that looks. Okay, so now to finish off my card, my sentiment, I grab a clear stamp, and this is, it says Happy Father's Day, but I took my scissors and I cut it and I took the happy off, and I just left the Father's Day. So this I'm going to stamp it, and I'm going to emboss it in white on black cardstock. And you could change the sentiment to whatever you want. Happy birthday, happy anniversary, happy whatever you would like. But like I want this for Father's Day, I decided to go with the Father's Day. Next, I go ahead and I grab a metal die and I cut that Father's Day out. And that is what I'm going to add right underneath the happy. And this die cut has a little slit where you can run ribbon through it, and the ribbon that I chose to use here has satin on the sides and it has like organza in the middle, which is really see-through. So what I do is I add glue only on the sides where there is satin, and I do it like in a crisscross form, and I just hold it down so that it can hold. And I also run my lighter just the edges and really quick, and this is just to avoid fraying of the ribbon. And you, of course, you could do this with every ribbon. You just have to do it quickly. And next I want to add some brads to the corners of my wooden piece here. And this is a little box that they sell at Recollections. I believe that's Michael's. And it just has different colors of brads. So I'm going to go ahead and I chose this one that it's like silver instead of the chrome. And this is, I chose the silver just so it can bring out some of that white that the stamped or the embossed Father's Day has. And to place my brads, I use the help of my mat here. And I just place it in the corner and I go one down and one inward. I'm going to do it again here. Place it in the corner of two lines here. And then I am going to go one down and one in. And I'm going to do this with every corner. And this just helps it for you to place the brads more evenly. I take my hole punch, and this is a 1/16 of an inch. It's really tiny. This is 1/16 of an inch. And I just go ahead and I pierce those dots that I had already signaled that that's where my brads are going to go. So then I go ahead and I grab my brads and I just put them through the little holes, and I open the backing. So now it's time to glue everything onto my cardstock. But before I do that, I'm going to add these little corner pieces. And this is an item that I found on AliExpress. And these are for photos, but I think that this is perfect for card making because there are some times where you just want a little something on the corners that you don't necessarily want something big. And I thought these were perfect. It comes in 3 colors, which is the tan color, white, and black. And I got 2 sheets of each. I carefully add the glue to my card base and I add the first layer. I then grab my large happy. I add glue to the back and I place it at a slant on the wood looking cardstock, and I just hold it there for a little bit so it could stick. Next I go ahead and I glue the Father's Day right underneath the happy. This piece is ready to be added to the card base, and I just glue it on. And here is a closer look at the card completed. I loved it, and it was so fun to make and actually quite easy. Here is a different variation of the card. This is the one without using the wood stamp in back. I wanted you to see both options. Thank you so much for giving me your time, and I hope I inspired you, and I hope you are happy and create. See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe, please. Thank you. Bye-bye. You're going to see that in some places I have little bubbles, and this is because of the SpongeBob. Nice. He had to start the washing machine. Ugh.